Have you ever experienced a covert narcissist trying to, make peace? How did that go? Did you walk away feeling better? Feeling more peaceful? Or did you walk away feeling like you had just been in hand-to-hand combat? Like you're walking away from a war zone, or you're walking away not even really sure what just happened. Welcome to the Covert Narcissism podcast. I'm your host, Renee Swanson. I am not a therapist, and you are not a victim. Today, I'm going to share a story with you from someone that I have worked with. I have her permission to share this story, and I'm going to call her Sharon, which is obviously not her name. Now, Sharon's story is not about an intimate relationship. It is actually about a work relationship. And dealing with covert narcissists in a work environment is, there's a lot of similarities. There's no doubt about what you're dealing with, but it is a different dynamic in that it is not an intimate relationship. So this was her boss, and let's call him Roger. He's the manager of a small company, and she was his right hand. She was just bending over backwards to make everything work and to keep the company successful. You see, she believed in the mission of the company and even Roger's position within it. She believed in him and that he was a good fit for this space. And in their 15-year relationship at this job, she was focused on making him successful. She connected with clients. She planned special events. She met with him at a moment's notice, rearranging her schedule to prioritize the business. Even though this was a part-time position for her, she worked plenty of extra hours, giving above and beyond for many years because she was committed to the mission of this company. Well, he was extremely pleased with her efforts, and he took many opportunities to tell her that, expressing appreciation publicly at company meetings and in front of the clientele. She was acknowledged in award ceremonies, and her role within the company was greatly appreciated. Their families were friends. They interacted socially. You see, this was a small company, and so it was a very family environment for the employees and the clients. As he placed her more and more in a position of authority within the company, she began to make decisions that she believed were best for the clients, and thus the company, and also decisions that followed suit of the track that he had set up in this company for the last 15 years. She actually even took a full-time position then within the company and was enforcing decisions that he had previously made and was making it work for the clients. However, much to her surprise, he began to buck up against her. His support of her diminished. And in fact, she began to be met with resistance from him on the very things she was implementing that were his decisions to begin with. One example of this was regarding a program that he had cut from the company about 5 years earlier. Yet as she was now the one in charge of this piece of the company where that program had been, he insisted that she bring the program back. Well, she had supported his cut of the program. It was a good decision for the company and the clientele. And she expressed her concern then to him, hey, you made the right decision several years ago. Bringing it back would be a mistake. And so she resisted his decision to bring this program back. Well, then he went behind her back, trying to persuade her team against her, making her out to be the bad guy. Even in front of the clients, he made scenes showing clear dissatisfaction with her. Then in the office, behind closed doors, loud enough to be heard by employees and clients outside, he berated her, aggressively yelling at her, telling her that she knows nothing and doesn't belong here. This being just one example of many. He worked to turn the staff and the clients against her. He even stole things from her office and then blamed it on her for not having them. He stormed out of multiple meetings, making quite a scene, and resisted every attempt by her to talk about this, to come to some form of peace, reconciliation, compromise, and instead, he consistently flipped everything back on her. Well, eventually, he left the business entirely. And in fact, left in a big scene, another big storm. And he went and opened another branch in another town, with the same company, but another branch in another town. Well, she spoke with her superiors who knew everything about what was going on. and was told that this was not on her and to just keep doing the work she was doing and that she was doing a good job. So she continued to move up in the company. Well, their circles interacted every now and then, and because they were both in the same parent organization, but yet he made no attempt to reconcile with her. So she just kept her distance. She focused on her branch and her clients. She remained a faithful worker and has done well within the company. In fact, she was promoted to manager of this branch and now in charge of all the employees here. After several years of this awkward distance at, social events, the company parties, the company, holiday season, he reached out and he asked for a meeting with her. He reached out to her personally. And politely, she tried to keep this to a phone call. Can we just chat by phone? But he insisted on a face-to-face conversation. She knew that his branch was not doing well. He was not being very successful there, but hesitantly, she agreed to meet with him. And this is the story of that meeting. So he comes into her office and he starts describing this friend of his. And it's a friend who was at the end of her life, and it was just so sad that this friend was going to be dying, and he was going to miss, this friendship, but that the friend was doing some real deep self-reflecting, and that this friend was realizing that they're going to miss out on the beautiful things of life and leave behind the people that they care about. And so she was reaching out to those that she had conflict with or problems with, and she was making peace. And he went on to say that he was so blessed to have had the opportunity to reconcile with her, and that he wanted to do that too. Before it was too late, he wanted to make peace and he wanted to reconcile. He went on and talked about how much this spoke to his soul, and that he didn't want to hold on to grudges. He'd been doing some deep self-reflecting and felt compelled to make things right. Well, this all sounded hopeful. She even relaxed a little bit. Okay, maybe we're going in a good direction here. She was open to reconciling. She had never really understood why things turned the way that they did, and she certainly wanted to clear the air and move forward. At the very least, she was hopeful for a friendship at the business social functions that was easy and safe. So she listened. Well, then he went on to say, I want to let you know. Now remember, he just said, I want to make peace, I want to reconcile. But the next words out of his mouth, I want to let you know that I have forgiven you. What? Her heart completely deflated in that moment. You have forgiven me? It was like someone had just let all the air out of her balloon in her chest. She said this one sentence completely short-circuited her entire system. He came here to tell me that he has forgiven me? She could not even comprehend this. He went on to explain how angry he had been at her, but he wasn't anymore. He was able to move past his anger, and that he wanted to just put the past behind him now. He was ready to move forward. She just sat there in silence. He even went on to say, if I had handled this like my superior would have, and he named the superior, then you would still be in little pieces all over the floor. Their anger at how bad you treated me would have been explosive. So you can be glad that they weren't around to handle this. I'm not angry anymore. I've forgiven you. She listened in total disbelief that this was happening, unable to speak. He continued, so I'm ready to come back. I would like to come back to this branch and work here again. I'm ready, and it's time. Now, let me just stop here for a minute and let that soak in. He came to make peace with her. You would think that's to offer an olive branch. But let's summarize what happened here. First, he played on her sympathy and her compassion. He was talking about sentimental things, his friend who was dying and making peace with people, and his soul and his self-reflection and his desire to make things right. Then he offered a backwards apology. I've forgiven you. Forgiveness is supposed to happen. Forgiving someone makes them feel good. So I forgive you. So therefore you should feel good. You should be proud of me for forgiving you. And the words you should be saying are thank you. But this passes all the blame to her for everything that happened in their past. And then he spoke to his excellent behavior with, even a little bit of a threat in there. How forgiving he is and ready to move forward. Clearly such a big person of great character. And that his behavior wasn't all that bad. A justification, it could have been much worse. So this is no big deal. Downplaying the problems that he had caused, the pain she had went through, never even really getting acknowledged here. But talking about, how it could have been handled so much worse. And then summarize all of that with an entitlement to his expectations. A statement of his wants and desires with an expectation, mind you, of acceptance. I want to come back. Now, what was missing here? How about an actual apology? Nowhere in here did he utter the words, I'm sorry. Nowhere in here did he acknowledge that any of his behavior was actually wrong, even though he was even returning things to her that he had stolen from her office. But no acknowledgement of any of that. No, I'm sorry that I hurt you or upset you. What else was missing? How about genuineness? Did he even have a friend that was dying and reconciling with others? Did he make that up entirely to play on her sympathy? How about compassion and empathy? Any recognition of her needs, her thoughts, her feelings? Any, hey, how have you been? He didn't even walk in the door with that of, how you been? Any acknowledgement of her? Did he even see her? What else was missing? How about even asking? Even the question, please, may I come back? I know things got bad, but I would certainly like to try again. Would you be willing to give me another try? But no, his words were, so now I'd like to come back. It's time. So after listening to this monologue, I asked her, I said, what did you say? Because now it's her turn to speak. And she said that she sat there listening to this monologue, her head spinning with, okay, how do I respond to this? What do I say? How will he react? I can't say yes. Hey, open the doors. Come on back in. How do I speak my mind? But how do I do it maybe gently? What do I do with this? I don't want to fight. I don't want to hurt him, but I'm definitely not putting myself back in that situation again. So she said gently and kindly, I simply said, I'm not comfortable with that idea. That was her simple response. And I love that response. But she said that one simple statement instantly brought back the meanness and entitlement. He puffed up in front of her. Mind you, after all of this, self-reflecting and wanting to make peace and all that, I want to just make sure that we're good and that everything's okay. After all the right words, or sort of right words, mixed in with a lot of not right words, after all of that, he puffs up in front of her and says, so that's your answer? That's how you want this to end? I told you I want to come back. She simply repeated, I'm not comfortable with that idea. Well, now he got in her face and said in a very menacing voice, have a nice life, and walked out the door. What happened to the self-reflection? What happened to the desire to make things right? What happened to, I want to make peace, to reconcile, to clear the air? That wasn't his intent, and that became very clear. Coming back and being back in charge with her fixing everything for him, that was his intent. She had stood her ground, but I love this. She stood her ground without matching his meanness. without defending herself, without reliving the past, without explaining and justifying. She simply stated how she felt about his current proposal, and she repeated it like a broken record. Now, she was proud of how she had handled the situation, and she did not carry guilt when he walked back out that door. Now, this situation was in the work environment, and maybe you can relate to that. For many, it does apply in a work environment. And for many of you listening now, it applies to an intimate relationship, a spousal relationship, or a family relationship. Their attempts at making peace are disastrous. They're just a continuation of the war that you seem to be in with them, whether you want to be or not. I hated it when my husband would try to, quote unquote, fix things with me or our children. His approach to making peace was a nightmare. It never turned out well for anyone. Except him, because we would just give in, because it's the only way we could find peace. Now, in these intimate relationships, spousal relationships, maybe you tell them that you're getting together with your friends, on a Saturday night for dinner and a movie, and they blow up at you, yelling at you for being so selfish and inconsiderate, calling you names or stating mean accusations. Or they huff and puff around the house, sullen and putting on their show of being so upset with you that you would go spend time with someone else. And then you go your separate ways throughout your day, but you return home that evening. And this is where the attempt at making peace comes. You see, now they play on your sympathy. They say things like, my whole day was impacted by how our morning went. It sat in my heart all day and I could barely focus on my work. I just couldn't handle it. I couldn't even eat lunch because my stomach was a mess. I was so upset. I had been looking forward to our company lunch all month, but I just couldn't stand the thought of eating and knowing that you were upset. My coworker even came over to check on me, and they know how much I care about you. I stared at your picture all day on my desk. There are tear marks on my papers. How far do you want this to go? On and on, just trying to get your sympathy and resonate with the heartstrings that you have. But then the backwards apologies come. I want you to know, though, that I forgive you for how you treated me. Never mind the fact that he spent the morning yelling at you, calling you names while you're trying to have a civil conversation. Then they downplay their behavior. Steve just, he really berated his wife, and he was telling me about what happened. He even punched a hole in the wall to scare her. He really needs to work on controlling his anger. And then he came to work and gloated out over how much he controls her. You can sure be glad that you're not his wife. This was nothing compared to what they go through. I'm sorry, but this isn't a competition that I want to be in. And then the entitlement to their expectations. I'm ready to move on. It's time to fix dinner. In other words, you need to fix dinner. I can get over this enough to spend the weekend with you. I think I can enjoy that date night Saturday night. I'm looking forward to going. What? No, you're going out with your friends on Saturday night. But now in this conversation, you don't even know which end is up. None of this makes sense, and certainly none of it feels right. Did he just apologize? I don't know. Maybe. I don't think so. Is he offering an olive branch? I don't see one. Am I just being overly critical? He's putting in the effort. Maybe this is his way of apologizing. Shouldn't I just accept it and, stay home Saturday night with him so that we can make things work? This is where the 3 simple steps of boundary setting come into play. If you missed that episode, go back and listen to it. Number 1 is acknowledge his feelings. I hear that you are upset, and I do hate that. Or, I hate that you were upset and had a hard day. There's an acknowledgement of his feelings because I want to stay a compassionate person. I'm not going to match their meanness. Number 2 is state your boundary. I really don't like feeling bad for doing things with my friends, so I'm not going to feel bad for this. Number 3 is the redirect. But you and I can go out on Sunday. What would you like to do? You've been wanting to go hiking. Do you want to pick a place? These 3 simple steps are incredibly powerful. They allow you to keep the compassionate heart that you want to keep, while at the same time setting a boundary for yourself. This process allows you to protect your sense of self while you are putting in an effort to having a peaceful relationship with this person. Whether you're still living with them, whether you're co-parenting with them, or whether they're your friend, in a social group or your coworker at work. They give you a simple formula so that you can stop the overthinking. I don't need 50 different ways to say, hey, I don't like to feel bad for going out with my friends. I don't need to come up with other ways to say that. It's a clear, simple, and not mean statement. Using this formula and sticking to it helps to stop inside of you the constant ruminating, overthinking, overanalyzing, and desperately searching for the single best solution. If you would like to talk through the specifics of how to implement these steps in your situation, reach out to me. I'm here. You can find my small group or individual healing programs on my website at covertnarcissism.com. Moving into this holiday season, you will need boundaries in place to be able to keep your environment, inside and out, as peaceful as possible. I am here to help you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. You have been listening to the Covert Narcissism podcast. If you are struggling with covert narcissism in your life, I help people to heal from covert narcissistic abuse. If you are struggling with the isolation, the self-doubt, and the obsessive thinking, then this is the program for you. I offer both group and individual options. This is live, personalized coaching that is specific to covert narcissism. Reach out to me anytime. You can find me at my website, covertnarcissism.com. I'm not a therapist and you are not a victim. I am a coach and you are a survivor. I wish you so much peace on your journey of healing. The information provided by Renee Swanson and the Covert Narcissism podcast is for educational purposes only and is not to be used for diagnosis purposes and not intended to be a substitute for clinical care. Please consult a healthcare provider for guidance specific to your case. This material discusses narcissism in general. It does not claim that any specific person has narcissism and should not be used to refer to any specific person as having narcissism. Permission is not granted to link to or repost this material to support an allegation or a claim that any specific person is a narcissist. That would be an unauthorized misuse of the material and information provided.